Hi, I'm Unnati Bhatt with the WestfordCAT, and today we're here at the Lights for Liberty Vigil and Rally, and I'm here with
Emily Gilstrap.
So we're going to be asking Emily a few questions about what's happening today and what can be done to make the situation better for everyone.
So I think it's really important for people to understand that their voice matters. I think a lot of people are just going, wow, this is so terrible, I don't know what to do. And that's why I actually organized this event, was to kind of educate people on what they can do and that they should consider their voice important, and that reaching out to your representatives, they want to hear from their constituents. They care what you think. And when we all get together and do that en masse, it's very powerful. And I was raised as an activist. My parents taught me that you can have an effect, especially when you get together. They told me stories from when their days of activism where, I think it was during Nixon, and he, pretended he was watching a football game, but secretly he was paying attention to how many people were in the streets. And that is, that story has stuck with me, and told me that you have to act. You can't sit back. You can't be silent. You have to have a voice. So that can be reaching out to your representatives, calling, in this case, the Department of Homeland Security, or the Senate and House committees for Homeland Security, and tell them to make specific demands. You can write letters to the editor. That's another way to get the word out. And you can organize events. I'm just a science teacher. I'm a mother. I had a 2-week vacation and I decided I'm going to organize an event. I'm just Joe Schmo, and I did this, so you can too.
Thank you so much for doing this. And also, how do you think Lights for Liberty can continue to spread their message in a way that attracts more people and all types of people?
What Lights for Liberty is doing is pretty amazing. We had, at last count, 788 events worldwide. So they were in London and Amsterdam and all over the country. So I think the message was spread really well. But I think, obviously we got to keep trying. This is just not the beginning, but the middle. We got to keep going. And that's the message that the drivers of Lights for Liberty have spread as well, that, this is just one night. We got to keep going until this inhumanity is brought to a close.
And finally, to kind of summarize, why is it so important to rally and protest for this effort and for this cause?
Because the people in those detention centers, the children that are taken from their families, are traumatized for their rest of their lives. That damage is already done, and they don't have a voice unless we speak up. And I'm a citizen, and I'm a proud citizen of the land of the free, and I feel it's my civic duty to speak up and make sure that that's what we really are, that we uphold what we supposedly represent.
Yes, and you are part of this profound moment in protest against the inhumanity faced by migrants at our border, whether it be children and adults in detention for unlawful amounts of time, in inhumane conditions, or children being traumatically separated from their families, in many cases with no guarantee of reunion. By being here, you are acknowledging that whoever you are, whatever guides your moral compass, you have the moral authority to be outraged and the responsibility to speak up. You are acknowledging that you can do something and that your voice matters. Thank you for being here. So at this point, hopefully you have received some information about actions you can take or how you can request further info, get further involved, such as organizations you can support that are doing good work. That's going around. If you haven't received that, let's make sure you get that. And again, do share what you're doing here tonight on social media, #CloseTheCamps, hashtag Lights for Liberty, and any other hashtags you want to share. So, my name is Emily Gilstrap. I am a Westford resident, and I organized this event. Thank you. An event is also taking place at Suffolk Correctional Facility in Boston, because, as believe it or not, there are detainees being held right here in the Boston area. I am simply a concerned citizen, a mother, and an elementary science teacher. Many of my students have been immigrants. They are bright, shining stars who light up my life every day. When I try to imagine my own child being taken from my arms and placed in one of those facilities, that is all it takes to move me to action. I am an activist born and raised, and my activism comes from a deep sense of pride in what my country stands for, is supposed to stand for. So when it fails to do so, I believe the most patriotic thing, the most brave thing one can do is speak up, protest, take action until we live up to the beautiful ideal that we represent. Tonight we will hear from a wonderful group of speakers. We will hear from a man on the board of the Veteran Service Corps who are working on this issue, as well as an asylum seeker and an immigration lawyer. Senator Jamie Eldridge will speak about the Safe Communities Act and the work that he's done to advocate for immigrants. And Senator Ed Kennedy will also speak with us. We will conclude with words from Reverend Kathleen Hepler from First Parish United Church. I want to give special thanks to Indivisible Westford and their founder, Beth Schaefer Morrison, as well as Beth Perkins Peterson from Action for Social Justice at the First Parish Church, both of whom were integral to making this event possible. I also want to thank our co-sponsors Solidarity Lowell and Indivisible Acton for putting us in touch with surrounding communities and speakers. So just before I kick things off, I want to read a portion of an email I received from Congresswoman Lori Trahan regarding her recent visit to the border. She said, "On July 1st, 2019, I, along with several of my colleagues from the House, traveled to El Paso and Clint, Texas, to witness firsthand the conditions in which asylum seekers and their children are being detained. What I saw was heartbreaking. Flu-stricken toddlers asleep on the floor were quarantined in a tiny room. A young girl in a hot warehouse with a chain link fence around her. A little boy asking through the glass where his papa was. And many women sobbing in a crowded cell because they missed their children. Our system is broken, and I will not stop until it is fixed. How we treat human beings, children, in our custody is a direct reflection of our nation's values. There needs to be a broader conversation about comprehensive immigration reform, but Congress and the President must act now to stop these grave violations of human rights. It is imperative that we hold the administration accountable for its actions against the most vulnerable members of society. We cannot delay another moment. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. We are honored to have Senator Ed Kennedy, who represents the Lowell and Westford areas, here to say a few words. Senator Kennedy, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be with you here with you today. I'm also very sad that we even have to be here as a group, along with other groups throughout the country on this issue. I just think that it's really too bad. And for me, and I'm sure for most of you, what the Trump administration is doing down at the border is an embarrassment, I think, to most Americans. What the Trump administration plans for this weekend is also an embarrassment, I think, for most Americans, and an embarrassment for me. In February 2017, I was the mayor of Lowell, and a group came in from Lowell asking that we make Lowell a sanctuary city and declare ourselves a sanctuary city. The police department, I was happy to find out, already had policies in place which essentially made Lowell a sanctuary city, and so we did not have to do that. In Lowell, we were doing that long before anybody even heard of sanctuary cities. The mayor in Lowell, too, also serves as the chairman of the school committee. And it was just a couple of months later that it was brought to the school committee's attention that many of the students, and Lowell has a very diverse student body in all of its schools, but it was brought to the attention of the school committee that a lot of students, immigrants, were afraid to go to school because they were afraid that while they were at school, they would be snatched by ICE. And so the school committee passed a resolution, I believe unanimously, which prevented ICE from coming into any of the schools in Lowell during school hours, which I think was a real good move. I want to commend Senator Eldridge for putting this legislation forth. I'm proud to be one of the co-sponsors on this legislation. And there are 21 co-sponsors in the Senate, I think, at the last count. And I'd point out to you that there are only 40 senators in the state Senate, so 21 constitutes a majority. And there are many House members who have also co-sponsored this legislation, including State Representative Jim Acero, who isn't able to be here tonight, but I'm sure gives his full support to this cause. So I just want to say that I think that for Lowell, which is where I come from, immigrants are an important part of what we have. We have a lot of immigrant groups that come in from Europe, from Asia, but most recently from Africa, from any of the 54 communities in Africa. And there was a recent study that just came out that indicated that those immigrants provide 30% of the workforce in Lowell. That although the Trump administration will tell you that they provide a drain on the economy, they contribute $84 million annually in state and local taxes. They contribute over $20 million in Social Security taxes. And so they are important. I think they're important in Massachusetts, they're important in California, and in other states across the country. And so I would just urge you to call the state representatives that have not co-sponsored or that you're not sure of, and try to secure their support. And I would point out that I know of a couple of state representatives who a couple of years ago did not support the Fair Share Amendment, but we met in joint session. It was just a few weeks ago on the Fair Share Amendment, and those state representatives have come around and supported the amendment on that day. So don't give up on state representatives that haven't signed on yet. Go after each and every one of them. And with that, I just want to thank all of you for being here tonight. I think this is a really important issue, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening and have a great weekend. Thank you.
Well, our next speaker is an immigration lawyer. She is a resident of Westford. She happens to be my neighbor and friend, our very own Chiara St. Pierre. Chiara, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. My name is Chiara St. Pierre. I'm an immigration attorney. I live here in Westford.
I'm also a mom, so this is something near and dear to my heart. Emily, thank you for inviting me to be a part of it, and thank you to Emily and Beth for organizing this. I think it's really important, and it's honestly very touching to see that all of you care enough to be here. I think we can all agree that what's going on at the border is atrocious, and it's horrifying, and it's so sad to see, and it affects us all, I think, as parents, as siblings, you know, as family members and community members. So thank you all for being here. I'm a little bit nervous, so I have everything written down. The area of immigration that I practice is employment-based, so I'm not right on the front lines with the border crisis and the migrant crisis and what's going on, but I wanted to talk a little bit about, from my perspective, what the administration is doing in addition to building a wall, a physical wall, in the sense that there's also an invisible wall that they're building. For everything that we see in the news, there's stuff going on behind closed doors, whether it be policy changes or reinterpretation of the laws. And I think it's so important that we push our elected officials for comprehensive immigration reform. It's something that we desperately, desperately need. So what I'm hoping to give you is a little bit of perspective on that and why it's important. And also the fact that we could really do with an independent immigration court that is separate from the Justice Department to help make things a little bit more independent. So with that being said, I'd like to kind of dive into it a little bit. You know, that's the main message that I want to convey, but I wanted to talk a little bit about something that happened last summer in June 2018. It did make the news cycle. It wasn't reported as much as everything else that's going on, but then Attorney General Sessions, he cherry-picked a case. And this was a case that was decided by the Board of Immigration Appeals in 2014, and it had to do with asylum, which is what a lot of migrants come here seeking. And asylum is something, it's not illegal. Anybody has the right to ask for asylum, okay? Anybody who's being persecuted. And the way our laws are written, there's very specific categories and there's things that you have to prove, but you still have the right to ask for it. What happened last summer in June 2018, then Attorney General cherry-picked a case that had been decided, basically that classified and confirmed that women that were victims of domestic violence, individuals who were victims of gang violence, qualified for asylum, okay? He pulled this case and he overturned it, basically creating a ban from those, that class of individuals seeking asylum. One man effectively undid 25 years of legal precedent, okay, that our courts had worked to interpret the laws and worked to make these decisions, and then, you know, people like myself and attorneys that practice in the field would then apply it. And he pulled this case, and he had the authority to do so. There's a little known blurb in the INA that allowed him to do this, and he ruled on it and created a ban, effectively, from a certain class of people who just happened to be, you know, from Central America, El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala is the majority of where these people are coming from, seeking asylum. And, you know, it didn't get as much attention as I think it did, but I don't know if it scares you, but that terrified me because he undid what our courts had done and had worked hard to do. So when that happened, the ACLU got involved. They sued. They were representing 12 women who were seeking asylum. Their claims were found to be credible by asylum officers, and yet they were still ordered removed because of this new precedent that then Attorney General Sessions had set by overruling this decision. This is just one example of things that maybe aren't being reported as heavily, but have a mass effect on immigrants, on migrants seeking refuge in our country. And I think the message I want to convey is please stay informed about this. Educate your peers, educate your communities, your neighbors, talk to your elected officials, push for comprehensive immigration reform so that we can fix the foundation and that situations like this can't happen again. You know, our courts are backlogged and he's pushing, or the current administration is pushing quotas. They want immigration judges to hear a certain number of cases a year. And the judicial system should be independent. It shouldn't be, you know, tied to the Department of Justice in this way. So that's really the message that I wanted to convey. In my practice, which is, you know, mainly employment-based, where I represent multinational companies that are trying to move people back and forth,
or individual entrepreneurs who have an idea and want to start something here in the US and build jobs and opportunities, or students who want to stay here after they complete their education and use the skills that they have learned and apply them, to our economy, to our communities. And I think immigrants are such a fiber of the fabric of our country. We were a nation built on immigrants, and it's so terrible to see what's happening. So again, I guess my call to action to all of you is to stay educated, stay aware, do a little digging, take a deep dive in the internet one night if you're bored, and see what's going on, see some of these policy changes, and then really, urge our officials to really push for comprehensive reform. And let's start at the foundation. Let's fix our laws. Let's fix the system, because it's so clearly broken. And it's not just what we see in the news, which is horrible. And I honestly can't even speak about it, but I'm so glad that you're all here today and care enough to be here. And I urge you to get some more of the information that I believe Emily's passing out about how to get informed. So again, comprehensive immigration reform, independent immigration court system. I think it would make a huge difference, so that in the future, our children aren't up here, pleading for help and trying to have our voices heard. So thank you very much, everybody, for listening. I really appreciate your time and being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Chiara. That was so informative and disturbing and inspiring. And to touch on that call to action, as we hand it out, reach out to your representatives. They want to hear from their constituents and demand action. You can reach out to the House and Senate Committee on Homeland Security and make specific demands. Those specific demands are here, but obviously, improve detention conditions, close the camps, cancel raids until you have fulfilled basic human needs. They shouldn't be doing raids until they do that. Okay, so anyway. Next up, we're very honored to have Massachusetts State Senator Jamie Eldridge here to speak. I guess he's going to speak about his Safe Communities Act. He's a longtime advocate for immigrant rights, and he is a representative in Acton. So thank you, Senator. Come on up.
So good evening, and I want to thank Emily and Beth for organizing tonight's vigil. And I also want to thank Chiara for talking about her work as an immigration lawyer, and really give a special thanks to Senator Ed Kennedy. And Senator Ed Kennedy had mentioned that there are 21 senators that are co-sponsors of the Safe Communities Act, the legislation that I'm very honored to file. Of course, if not for his co-sponsorship, we would not have a majority of support in the Senate. And so I want to thank him for his leadership on that. I also want to thank him, though, for his leadership before he became elected as senator, when he was a city councilor, when he was mayor of Lowell, given the immigrant roots of the city of Lowell, for his support for immigrants in Lowell. So I want to commend him for his leadership on that. Thank you very much, Senator Kennedy. And as was mentioned, I also want to thank Representative Jim Marciaro, who is also a co-sponsor of the legislation, the Safe Communities Act. Thank you to everyone who organized this vigil and everyone who is here today to demand an end to the detention of refugees and undocumented immigrants. It's heartbreaking and nauseating to know that children and adults are being abused in the most degrading of ways in our name with our tax dollars. Their crime is that they were forced to flee life-threatening poverty and violence. Imagine being so desperate that you flee your home, your culture, your friends and family, and start a harrowing journey you don't even know whether you're going to survive. You're hungry and scared, but take an immense risk because you hope there is freedom on the other side. You hope there is a chance that you and your children can live dignified lives in safety because you're desperate for peace. You just want security and basic life necessities. You just want your child not to be hungry. Imagine after that harrowing journey, born out of desperation, being met by people with weapons drawn at you, barking orders at you, telling you to drink from the toilet, and forcing you to sleep on cold floors. Now imagine 3,000 miles away right here in Massachusetts and what many undocumented immigrants are going through because of the same administration. And that's why I filed this legislation 8 years ago. In the district that I represent, I have sat across kitchen tables with families in Marlborough, husbands who arrived here when they were 16 or 17 and were deported back to the country they were born in. I've sat in my Marlborough district office with a mother and child, with the daughter not being able to go back to all the places that her dad used to bring her to when they all lived as a family here in Massachusetts. And most recently, I've sat down with families in Maynard with mothers who no longer have their sons to provide financial support for them, who spent over 45 days in a county jail right here in Massachusetts. Individuals who have given back in every possible way to their community, to their church, picked up by police for not having a license, brought to a courthouse where ICE agents were waiting there to arrest them with the intention to deport them. This is what's happening in Massachusetts. So when we think about the detention camps, which there is nothing worse than what's going on there, but let's also realize that this is happening in Massachusetts as well, and in some ways with our taxpayer dollars as well. And that is why it's absolutely critical for our federal elected officials, but also state and local, to speak out against Donald Trump's mass deportation agenda. Now, I was just here a few weeks ago when similar organizations organized a rally for the Roe Act, and we're talking a lot about how many rallies do we have to do, and it's clear we're going to have to do rallies after rallies. But what are we asking our elected officials to do? And what I would say, when we're talking about the humanitarian crisis at the southern border, it is making absolutely certain that federal taxpayer dollars are not being approved given the conditions of the detention camps at the border. It's about making sure that our federal elected officials are fighting for a path to citizenship for undocumented immigrants. And it's making sure that in every possible way, we're making sure that law enforcement and our state officials are not in any way complicit or aiding the Trump mass deportation agenda. So that's what we're asking to happen. There's legislation at the federal level, there's legislation at the state level, and there's legislation at the local level. And I just want to highlight that this is really more than just Donald Trump, because what we know now is that this has been, in terms of how we treat undocumented immigrants, this is something that's really been going on for well over 25 years. And so we need to think about why there has been essentially a bipartisan agreement, both federally and state government, to allow this to happen in our names and with our taxpayer dollars. Few elected officials ask questions, and most pander to some fictional voter that they think wants mass deportations of undocumented immigrants and abusive refugees. But the reality is, and this is so important to emphasize, that a majority of Americans support a path to citizenship. A majority of Americans oppose the detention camps. And a majority of Americans oppose the use of our taxpayer dollars to cruelly treat migrant families and asylees. So what we have to do is demand that our immigration laws are rooted in humanity and justice. In Massachusetts, we have to demand that the legislature pass the Safe Communities Act, which makes sure that no state taxpayer dollars, making sure that state and local law enforcement are not involved with the mass deportation agenda, while also providing rights to undocumented immigrants that are picked up by ICE agents or arrested in courthouses across Massachusetts. We also need to pass the Work and Family Mobility Act, which would provide undocumented immigrants driver's licenses. And I can't emphasize enough how equally important the Work and Family Mobility Act is, because the reality is that undocumented immigrants driving without a license, beyond the fact that it's a public safety risk, it is a path into undocumented immigrants going to courthouses and getting arrested by ICE agents. And so we need to pass that legislation as well. I was very proud last session that the Senate did pass that legislation. We need to continue to urge all elected officials to demand justice for all immigrants across the country. And of course, we all recently just celebrated July 4th, and elected officials especially are always invoking our freedoms. Well, the freedoms, whether found in the US Constitution, whether found in the many state laws, federal and state, they are actual pieces of legislation that protect all of our rights and provide the freedom that we all care so deeply about. And so when we're talking about how do we end this national nightmare, how do we reverse the trend under the Trump administration, and I would argue it's passing these critical pieces of legislation. And I want to quote from Frederick Douglass's 1852, "What to a Slave is the 4th of July," which I was honored to participate in a reading of on July 3rd at the Boston Common. It's a beautiful speech. Please take a moment to read it. "Is this the land your father loved, the freedom which they toiled to win? Is this the earth whereon they moved? Are these the graves they slumber in? Our founding fathers fought for the freedoms that we care so deeply about. These freedoms are becoming eroded and attacked every day over the past couple years. Let's fight back. Let's close the camps and demand justice for all immigrants." Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here with you.
Thank you so much. These people are tall. Here we go. Next, I'm going to read a poem sent to us by a Cuban immigrant by the name of Ada Dean. The poem is entitled "The Children." First, I'll read the introduction by the author and then the poem, and I'll do my best to do it justice. As most of my friends know, I came as a child refugee in 1962. My brother and I came alone from Cuba and were without our parents for 6 months. We were treated well and eventually went to live with our family members we had never met. Still, it was a traumatic event that has been part of my life forever. The loneliness, the fear, the feeling of abandonment, the complete loss of control over your life, the immediate growing up at only 8 years old. That was my experience. I cannot imagine the trauma, grief, and fear experienced by these children who have been torn from their parents and thrown into camps where no one seems to care for them. I wrote the following and wish to share it with you. The Children by Ada Dean. Why are the innocent forgotten? We must champion the children, the blameless, the defenseless, the fledgling human creatures who ask for so little, just to be fed, just to be sheltered, just to be held in loving arms. Why are the vulnerable abused? It is our crime to turn a blind eye. It is our crime to accept the unacceptable. It is our crime to dismiss the suffering of the helpless. It is our crime to fund the greed of those who would exploit the powerless. Why are the young restrained? We must speak for those who cannot speak. We must shout until the bones of our ancestors rattle and the wind carries our voices to each and every being upon the earth. They are all our children. To follow these powerful words, we have an asylum seeker who is a local resident to speak about his personal experience. Please welcome Marius to the stage.
Everyone who is here. I'm sorry about my English though. I'm from the French-speaking country. So my name is Marius, and I'm from one of the West African country. I am an asylum seeker here in the United States, but before that, I would like to share a little bit story of mine, which I think 10 minutes is not sufficient, but I'm going to try to resume it a little bit. Yeah. I was born in West Africa, and my dad was a politician. In one of the West African country, and in 1999 he was assassinated when I graduated from college. I had to run. All my family were killed that day. I have to run to the neighboring country, which is Ghana. I stay in Ghana. They still persecuted me until 2004. I ran away to Guinea-Bissau, another West African country, where I got a temporary asylum. By the grace of God, in 2005, I got a scholarship to continue my education in Senegal, in one of the best universities in West Africa. And I went in for 5 years, where I graduated. Where I got my bachelor's degree in foreign languages, applied to business and tourism, and a master's degree in project management. I came back to Guinea-Bissau to get myself settled and started operating my own business. I started by owning a cyber cafe and then doing also a cashew nut business. I've been buying the cashew nuts from the farmers and then selling it to the Indians that export it to their country. So I've been making quite good money in that. So I thought all my pain and everything were wiped away since then. But recently in January 2018, I was out in Guinea-Bissau near the border between Senegal to go and get paid some of the farmers to keep me the cashew nuts, where I was kidnapped by a group of rebels who are fighting for the freedom of Casamance. I was kidnapped, I nearly died, but I got myself escaped until I managed my way out. I walked 1 week in the bush by taking a boat all across Senegal to Cape Verde to Brazil, Fortaleza, all by water. As I reached Fortaleza, I started this road to the United States. Why United States? Because it's a country that I believe they have freedom and they can protect me. So I started my journey throughout. It took me like a couple of months to reach here. I passed through so many detention. In any country that I will reach without a document as an asylum seeker, I have to go at least to a detention center to get myself screened before continuing the road. But the most painful detention that I have been was the one in El Paso, Texas. When I reached the United States, the Border Patrol held me and they sent me to the El Paso detention center. Not really at the immigration center. I was sent to the federal jail, which is in New Mexico, Ontario, where I was with all criminals of all kinds. Later on, the federal judge declared me not guilty of the charges they put in on me. And they have to move me to El Paso to the immigration detention center, where I spent like 6 months. But believe me, the detention center is not what I have experienced in other countries, but this one was a kind of like a maximum security prison. The food were not all that good. They prefer throwing the food away rather than giving us with the immigrant to eat. They do everything to discourage you from your asylum case. For instance, in my personal experience, I was not even having money to contract a lawyer by then when I was at the detention center. I have only 2 hours a week with my pavilion to go to the library and prepare your case by yourself. And I did this, and I have only 1 month to appear before the judge. I passed my credible fear, and I prepare my case by myself. And the only thing, the surprise the judge gave me was a 15,000 bond. If there wasn't organization, good people like you over here, I don't think I'm going to pay. I'm going to get that money to pay. But the Detained Migrant Solidarity Committee in El Paso helped me to pay the bond, and I came out. So I just don't want to be too long, and that is somehow immigrant. We are suffering. We are suffering here in the United States. We have no access to hospital, no health care, nothing we can do. We can work, we can do anything until our case are resolved. And who knows when. I'm a father of 2 doctors. I have to look after my kids. I have to work, but I haven't got that opportunity to do it. My life is kind of this route. I don't know exactly on what to focus. Day by day, I'm living day by day. I don't know what will happen tomorrow. Maybe living here tonight, ICE can pick me at any time, who knows? But my hope is in the hands of all good people with good heart and with God. Thank you.
Marius, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. That was heartbreaking, and I'm just ashamed of the way you were treated. And I really wish you the very best. So I think we may end up finishing a little early tonight. We've kind of moved things along pretty quickly, but I see so many wonderful people and children in the audience. I want to let you guys get your kids home, and so I'm going to continue as long as that sounds good to you guys. Yeah. So finally tonight we have Reverend Kathleen Hepler from the First Parish United Church. She is here to bring us words of empathy. Whatever your faith, or as I like to say, whatever guides your moral compass, I hope her words bring you inspiration and peace to your heart, and as we honor those suffering. Reverend Hepler, thank you so much for being with us.
Ask a minister to talk and they'll fill in the hour. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It's so good to be here. It's a hopeful thing to be here. What I want to say is the oldest wisdom that has gone through time and through the development of religions and cultures that can give us hope as humans in what I consider dark times. The oldest wisdom is that when we gather like this, we have the opportunity to look into the faces of other people and see there the light of the sacred, however you name the sacred. And it is this consciousness, this awareness, that is that which will save our world. We are here tonight to recognize each other's sacred beings and to stand for that awareness for all human beings. All human beings deserve basic human rights. knowing that there is no other, only an I and a thou. No other. We are all one, there but for the grace of chance. We stand here in our privilege and not in a detention center on the southern border. We know all too well that we humans can have other ways of looking at life. After all, our country, for all of its goodness and effort, was founded on genocide and built by slaves. Our country is under the thrall of those who would make a hierarchy of human beings, who would seek power over others instead of power with, who mock the law and mock our democracy every day. So tonight we light these candles for all of those who have been consistent advocates for immigrants. Our elected officials here tonight, thank you. All of you who have this gathering to your credit, thank you. All of you who have done many, many good and kind things for immigrants in this country. Our president tells us that we will be sweeping up great numbers of undocumented people this Sunday. And we hear that he says and does these things to play to his base. I say yes, employing the basest behaviors toward the defenseless, the desperate, and the frightened. We are here like all others over this world tonight saying that we are better than this. We require that we be better than this. We gather in solidarity with those families that have been separated. We gather to commit to hold our officials accountable to basic human decency and to bring love and creativity to the solution of what is called the immigration problem. Migrants, immigrants, those who fled the southern border are not a clump of faceless people who are a problem to be solved. They are, each and every one, fellow humans who mostly flee violence and poverty, hopelessness, and death in their countries. I imagine my own son or my daughter at 3 being held in a cage, sleeping on concrete, not knowing where their mother is. It's heartbreaking, it's enraging. We are better than this. All of us on earth right now are being called forth to great resolve and creativity as it pertains to the many challenges we face. We are up to this. We gather at times like this to use our privilege for the benefit of those who are not privileged. We show up, stand up, demand that we be held accountable as a nation for the mistreatment of others and the mistreatment of democracy itself. Tonight we gather for strength in the journey ahead. We practice the shining out of the light inherent in all people. We seek to create and find ways to include more and more people into the web of decent life and care. We must demand that our public officials be welcome to visit detention centers, private detention centers disallowing public scrutiny. I know a man who is undocumented and lives in this state and has been working in roofing for 4 years and fell and hurt his back to the point where he can no longer work. He has no insurance. He asked his boss of 4 or 5 years if there was some way he could help him with his medical bills, and he has since gotten help from the state. His boss asked him to show up and meet him, and he, Pablo, with his 9-month-old child, one of 5, showed up to meet his boss and was met with detention by ICE agents. His 9-month-old was given to the employer, and the employer took the 9-month-old to his family. I'm saying that not on our watch, that we treat people so inhumanely. The least of us, at the base minimum, children have to be treated with good care and mindfulness of their innocence. I recognize at a public event that prayer is can be controversial, but I have a prayer here written by an immigrant that I would like to give that is a spacious prayer, open to all religions, open to people with no religion, open to our yearning for our country to be a better place and our world to evolve beyond what it is right now. So if you would, let us pray. Sacred Spirit of unity, Espiritu Sagrada de la Unidad, Ayo Don Os, help us. In an era of division, we labor for greater community. Through fear, we hold on to the hope that is born when people come together in common purpose. Oppressed by hatred, we give ourselves to the transforming power of love. Spirit of unity, Espiritu de la Unidad, ayúdanos, help us. Help us to move beyond walls. Help us to live in the borderlands. Ayo don os, help us to awaken eyes and ears and touch and every sense to the vision we carry of an earth made one in all its beauty. Amen, bendiga, and blessed be. I'm so appreciative of your efforts and your gathering, and you look beautiful with your candles lighting up. May we go forward for the children.
Thank you, Reverend. That was beautiful. So I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to light your candles. We have extra candles, and I have a couple of electric sort of tea lights, maybe for the kids. And I'm going to play Woody Guthrie, This Land Is Your Land. Feel free to sing along while we light up. When the song finishes, that will be our cue for a moment of silence. After, I guess after about a minute or so, I invite you to take a walk around the common, just like a little candle parade. You're also welcome to stay seated if you prefer. All right, I'll get that queued up just a moment.
I am here because this is very important to me. I am an immigrant. I am a refugee. I came to the United States and I applied for asylum, and I had that chance, and I want people to have that chance. And I know that so many Americans are in support of this, and I know that it is a right way to treat people with dignity and to make sure that everyone has a chance. It is a human right to seek a better life. So let's give people a chance and treat everyone with dignity.
I am here because I don't want children to be in cages.
I am here because I think what's happening in our country is morally reprehensible, and I don't want my tax money going to support detention centers.
I am here because my grandmother and my grandfather were both immigrants, and they were very fortunate to come here through Ellis Island, and I can only imagine their difficult travel in 1905 when they came here, and they worked in the mills, and my family all worked in the mills, and I feel very fortunate to have succeeded like I have, but I feel so depressed about what's happening.
I am here because I am a citizen of this country. I feel that the issue at hand is one that has an important moral component, as well as my husband is an immigrant to this country. And so as a result, I would hate to see myself, others, my loved ones treated with the pain and suffering that others are currently going through at the border.
I'm here because immigrant rights are human rights. And I want to be proud of my country, and I can't be until my country treats all human beings with dignity, respect, and provides the basic health care and for each individual's well-being.
I'm here because every human being deserves basic rights, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, freedom, and not to be kept separated from their family members in horrific conditions, especially when they're just trying to better their lives and their families' lives.
I'm here because I don't think it's right, and it's sad that kids get locked up and get taken away from their parents, and I don't think that's a good feeling, and I don't want to be taken away from my mom.